simpler way in which we do it, a way in which we've been doing for the last last 130 years, is producing policy by pamphlets. And I know it sounds boring, and there's a joke that someone once said to me, how do you spot a Fabian or young Fabian at a house party? He's got a pamphlet in one hand and champagne in another. And you swiftly drop the pamphlet and grab another glass of champagne. And the thing is, these pamphlets, what they do is, it's a place where you articulate ideas. Some of the ideas may be awful, some of them may be good, but pamphlets are written by not only young Fabian members, but also MPs, party leaders, like Tony Blair's Clause 4 pamphlet in the 90s. And it's the idea is that you get ideas out there, you get feedback, and sometimes your idea that you've written down in the pamphlet may be picked up by a shadow minister or a minister if we're in government, and they may think it may work. They then run some modelling on it, and they then maybe will adopt it. So example of the process was back in 2013 when I was chair of the Health Network. I worked with the shadow health team, both Jamie Reid and Andy Burnham at the time, to think about some of the ways we could reform the healthcare system, especially at the time the terrible Health and Social Care Act was going through by the Tories. There was a huge challenge of how did the Labour Party respond. And Andy Burnham had, always had the idea of integrating health and social care, so we got talking with his team. And we ended up producing a pamphlet called Irreversible. It's up on the website if you want to have a read. And it talks about how we integrate health and social care, and a lot of those ideas were also fed into the kind of Labour Party thinking, and Jamie Reid was also involved in providing them forward. And some of the ideas were actually mirrored some of the manifesto pledges that we had in the run-up to 2015 election. Sadly, we lost the election, so none of the ideas could be implemented, but those are the ways you produce policy. And then there's other ways that you're involved in policy. So, Kirith could touch upon this, we run international delegations where we have high-level meetings with our counterparts in countries around the world, where we meet with not only ministerial advisors, but political leaders, and we share ideas. We learn about where we fail and where we do good, and we exchange ideas. And through that exchange of ideas, you can then think about what you can take home back in Britain and apply it to the way the party works here.
Yeah, I mean, the delegations give you the opportunity to do what politicians do, and that is to actually get involved in the policy discussions that they have abroad. But also, I mean, the Israel one that Martin mentioned earlier, I went to that December last year, which was a huge opportunity. I couldn't even have imagined the things that I would be doing over there, and the opportunities that we got out there. We met with the equivalent of MPs in Israel, we met some of them, we met local activists on the ground, both in Israel and Palestine, and then came back and started working on a pamphlet. And I didn't realise the impact things like that would have in MPs' offices until I started working in my MP's office, which was literally just 3 weeks ago. But we get pamphlets and magazines and blogs and things like that through all the time. And it could just be simple as taking a line from one of those articles and putting it into the speech and using that, and that's your idea implemented already. It's that simple. So, these ways of getting involved, they really do make a difference. They really do have an impact. And the Young Fabians have given me a lot of opportunity to do a lot of research and to go away and do lots of writing. So the Young Fabians have our own magazine called Anticipations, which we issue call-outs for every quarter, so you can get involved and write for that. You can submit ideas for what you want to write about. There's a blog as well that you can get involved in. And if you ever have any pamphlet ideas as well, we can always bring those to the table and figure out how we can work on those. And a lot of the stuff that we do is very much member-led, so it comes from the ground, and those ideas get put into practice, and before you know it, we've got another delegation on the card, or we've got another event, or we've got an event in Parliament, and that's literally how it spirals. And it's amazing to see the ideas that come out of meetings, once a month. Like the International Network, we have our own meetings, and we always have new members turn up to those. And the ideas that these people come out with, they're just incredible. And then we help them put them into practice, and it just flourishes like that, and it's incredible. And there really are lots of opportunities for you to get involved. Okay, so we'll take some more questions. Yes, Len.
Well, I'd just like to stand up, so I think it's big. So my name is Slyden, and I've been a young Fabian for a little bit now. And my question, I suppose, is, Martin, you were speaking about the Sikh and sort of Bengali community and other communities in terms of how they vote now. And I was wondering, from the change that's happened sort of from the 60s to now, we see that most of them came from sort of working class backgrounds and sort of established themselves as middle class. And is there a problem within the Labour Party in terms of, you know, getting that message to the sort of middle class Asians that are there now as opposed to the working class ones that were there? And is there something that the BAME community can do in that sense? So just to touch on that.
Yeah, thanks, Slyden. I think you're absolutely right regarding a lot of first-generation immigrants in the 1960s, from the Windrush onwards, the move of lots of Kenyan Indians back to Britain in the 1960s. They entered the workforce and were largely working class, and a lot of the immigrants, Kenyan immigrants, were very entrepreneurial, created whole swathes of small business, some which have contributed a huge amount to our economy and our way of life. And a lot of them are now middle class. And when they look at our party, they can't really connect with it on quite a few levels. First of all, we don't seem to be speaking to them and their aspirations. And how do we solve that problem? I think it's a multi-layered issue. There's one in terms of our terminology and the way we approach ethnic minority kind of politics. The thing is, we are not a monolithic group. First of all, I think the term BAME is not the best term and should be used less. I know it's a BAME Action Conference, but it should be used less because everyone has individual ideas and thoughts. And it's about treating people as kind of individuals and understanding just because they're from an ethnic minority doesn't necessarily mean they'll just are going to agree with us because their parents supported us, for example. Secondly, we have a broader problem of identity within our party. I think that the Young Fabians, as much as I love it and I cheer it, are sometimes part of the problem in terms of the similar type of people being involved in politics, and therefore when they end up becoming MPs or advisors are so detached from the general public. And that's why, I think, Corbyn's leadership is very interesting because it can revitalise the process, potentially reform our image as a technocratic party. But with regards to your question, it's multi-layered. It's one of terminology and language, and the way we approach ethnic minorities, and not treating them as a monolithic group, and going out to these communities and actually speaking to them, speaking to people of Indian heritage, speaking to people of Bangladeshi heritage, and finding out what their true concerns are, not thinking, okay, they're ethnic minority, so they're guaranteed to vote Labour. And when we start doing that, it'll be better. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to also add on to that, I do agree with everything that you said there in terms of talking in terminology around not treating minorities as a monolith and being detached from the actual struggles that they're going from in day-to-day life. But in terms of middle class, and again this comes from research and just reading into it for a while, in terms of middle class background, it's also about kind of shaping the discourse that pervades their thought and pervades their thinking around politics, etc., etc. And it is a kind of a responsibility of setting a reminder of exactly what happened in the past and what part Labour did play to make sure, just as Kirith said, allowing us to be in the position that we are now. The 1974 Immigration Act was phenomenal, and the Race Relations Act, was phenomenal in kind of giving us the freedoms that we needed in order to be here right now. It's about creating the discourse around that, around kind of reminding people exactly what Labour's about, exactly what we're fighting for, what we're trying to do for their next generation, for the responsibility that they have to ensure that their children have the same opportunities and chances as they did, as we do, and reminding people that it's not over. That the struggle isn't over. There is still issues. There are still problems with race relations and discrimination, although not so in your face or overt, if you will. It's just about reminding those people and shaping the discourse around those kind of things.
Thank you. I think we've got one question.
Yeah, I think we've got time for one more. Yeah.
I'm Saeed, relatively new to the Labour Party, although it feels like a lifetime. So my question was, you talked about incremental socialism, which is a great phrase. So the last Labour government, so 13 years, they had incremental socialism, possibly not to the pace of change something overnight. That's what they did. What we see over the last 6 years, Conservative government, and probably the next 4 years is a reversal of that. How do you think the Labour Party and how do you think they will sort of meet that challenge?
That's great. That's a great question. So it's a tough time for us. Incremental socialism, in other terms, gradualism, is a kind of political philosophy that underpins Fabianism and, to some extent, the Labour Party. First of all, the origins of that was in the late 19th century, where the working class left movement was at a crossroad. Do they go for the Russian option and perform revolution? But no, but you had middle class intellectuals sitting around drinking tea saying that would be a bit too much. Let's go at it at a slower pace. And the last Labour government, yes, they made change, and some say the pace was slow, and some say on certain issues and certain topics we won't go into weren't the best and weren't fully reflective of Labour values. But we did achieve a lot of good in Scotland. Now, you're totally right, the Tories are ripping up a lot of that, especially with the NHS Health and Social Care Act. Introducing any qualified provider was a massive issue in terms of introducing privatisation for the back door. That's an example. How does the Fabian Society respond to this, and the Labour Party respond to this? It's, I think, picking up on a term you said, the pace. The pace may need to change. Yes, we are gradualists and we want to create a more equal and fairer society within the confines of democracy, but we have to think about the pace of change and the type of policies we want to implement. We want to be more radical, more forward-thinking. We must think about the fact that there's been a huge amount of change that's happened over the last 10 to 20 years. The internet, communication has changed, which has changed the nature of work and has impacted our base of working people. How do we rise to that challenge? We think about very bold, far-reaching policy. That's why some of the stuff that John McDonnell is doing with his economic advisors is very exciting and interesting, talking about certain things